Lawyer Up. This is an upcoming game about, well, courtroom drama. It is a two-player game where a player will be the prosecution and the other player will be the defense in a case, and there are different cases. This is a prototype of the base game, which the rulebook says will come with two cases, one about art theft and one about a murder. The prototype that was sent to me only has the murder case, so that is the one that I play, but that is therefore a game that has opportunities, that has ample options for expanding and for replay value. So this is a prototype of an unreleased game because the publisher contacted me and asked me if I wanted to take a look, and I was curious, so I accepted to play the game, receive a prototype, and then make a video about it. But this is not a paid preview. I want to point that out. All of my videos are always for free, free of charge, and highly opinionated. In any case, I want to thank the publisher for giving me a chance of taking a look at this game. So, Lawyer Up. Now, courtroom drama, play through cards. A card game about, again, I don't know how much it's about real legal procedure or about it as legal TV shows. To me, there's very little different because I'm not an expert, so be it. Now, we have the judge, of course, a judge represented by a card. The judge is never neutral, will always be slightly favoring the prosecution or the defense. And this, for example, is a tiebreaker. When both players have the same influence on a witness, then the witness is won by the side that the judge is favoring. However, the judge loves the underdog, so when a player loses a witness, then the judge goes to their side. So the prosecution lost a witness to the defense, then now the judge thinks, oh, poor prosecution. Which is a little strange. It's a balancing mechanism, of course, but you would expect the judge to be more impressed by the people that keep winning, that keep shaping the perception of the witness in the way that they want. That's what thematically winning a witness means. And the idea is precisely that players will play to control the witnesses, will collect witness cards that will generate influence, and that will allow them to change the opinion of the jury. So you have 12 jury members represented by those cards there. Each has a track of four things. And during the game, you will use influence to drag that token towards your side. At the beginning of the game, six members of the jury start slightly biased towards the defense. You can see there on the blue side of the token, and the other 6 start slightly biased towards the prosecution on the red side of that track. In order to win, the prosecution needs to make sure that all jury members are on the side of the prosecution. In order to win, the defense needs just one juror, single member of the jury, to be on the side of the defense. So it's not an equal context, but that seems to be thematically appropriate and accurate, because that's what I saw in TV shows and movies also. Now, as you can see, the tokens representing the opinion of the members of the jury have different symbols because they represent different biases. This member of the jury is more influenced by emotional argument, this other one by legal arguments. Everybody likes different things. And so you will have game effects that say, for example, let you move a bias that is an emotional bias or a rational bias, or so on and so forth. So that's what. Now, what else do we use to perform the tasks in the game and resolve our dramatic court drama? We use witnesses, but which witnesses we use is decided by the strategies of the players. Each player, defense and prosecution, has a pool of strategy cards. Each player selects one at the beginning of the game. The other ones are set aside. And then the cards that have been selected will determine the witnesses from this large pool of witnesses that will be part of this game. So again, you have replay value, or even if you're playing the same case, because as you can see, there is a large pool of witnesses, and you will not usually have the same ones unless players choose the same strategy cards. Not all content in this game is family friendly, so just be warned about that in case you're planning to play the game with your kids. And suppose that after the strategy cards have been selected, these are the witnesses that we have selected, and we place the witnesses around the judge, like so. Now, what else? Then we have the actual cards. Remember, this is a card game, so players will use card decks. Each player has a unique card deck. There is one for the prosecution and one for the defense. Incidentally, it may be the case to explain what those symbols mean. Well, D means defense, of course, and P means prosecution. The number next to the letter indicates how much influence you gain. By playing cards, you will gain influence over a witness, or again, over the perception of the jury regarding the witness. So, for example, if the defense plays that card, then they gain 3 influence, and each player has a tracker to keep track of that. So personal deck for the defense, personal deck for the prosecution. Then we have the general deck. The general deck also has neutral cards which generate that number of influence points for whoever plays it. So neutral is if I play by the defense, on the defense side, then counts as influence for the defense. Otherwise it counts as influence for the prosecution. And cards have those symbols there which are all important, all important. We start the game after we decide the strategy and select the witnesses. We start the game with a, what's it called, the discovery phase, the research phase. Basically, it's a preparation phase in which both legal teams are preparing the case. It's advanced setup. It's already part of the game, really, because you make important decisions, and it takes a while. It's almost like a mini game or not so mini. What happens during the discovery phase? Each player simultaneously takes 3 cards in their hand from the general deck. And so you look at these 3 cards, or 4, if you're clumsy or you're cheating. You look at your 3 cards and you choose one of them. Suppose I am the defender, the defense. Of these 3 cards, one I put face down in my own personal pile. One I give to my opponent, I put it face down in their pile, and one is buried, goes in another pile called the buried pile. Meanwhile, my opponent is doing the same. They place 1 card in my pile, 1 card in here, and 1 in the buried. Now, of course, I want to give myself all the good cards, I want to give my opponent all the bad cards, and the ones I don't really know what to do with, I put in the buried pile. However, there will be game effects that may allow players to take cards out of the buried pile. So, if there's a card that I don't want you to have, and I put in the buried pile, there are good chances you will not get it, or okay chances, but if I really don't want you to have it, then I put it in my own pile. Whether that is going to help me or not, I'm taking like a dead card that doesn't do much for me, but I'm 100% sure it doesn't go to you. And we continue like this until this entire deck is gone. So again, I told you this is really a part of the game. It's a mini game. At that point, so this deck is split into 3 equal piles. 1 is the buried pile and 1 for each player. Then you take this deck, which has a half formed by cards you selected and half by cards the opponent stuck in there. You take this deck and you shuffle it together with your starter deck, and that's how you form the actual deck that you will use during the game. So it'll be a thick deck, but trust me, you need it, and you may still actually run low on cards by the end of the game. At this point, we're finally ready to play. Well, after I explained, they also have opposition tokens. Once per game, you can use an opposition token to cancel a card that the opponent played. You also have a sidebar token. The rulebook shows a picture. There were no sidebar tokens in my prototype, so I made one. 1 per side. The sidebar token will allow you to draw a card when spent and allows you also to flip the favor of the judge. Now, the starting player will select a witness and place it in the middle of the area. The starting player places it so that the top left corner faces, well, the player that selected it. Suppose, again, I am the defense. But this one is interesting to exemplify. I am the defense. I play that one. I select it, so I take the left top left corner and faces me. That already generates or may generate points. I am the defense. Neutral 3 is facing me, so that generates 3 points for me, because you remember neutral generates influence points for the defender or the defense or the prosecution. The side that is facing my opponent is D2. My opponent's prosecution, so that generates 0 points for them. If my opponent took that card, my opponent is sitting there, my opponent is the prosecution, they start this witness with 3 influence points, and I start with 2. So it's not just about what you get, but also about what you deny to the opponent. If I play this card as the defense, I have a differential of 3, so that's pretty good. The opponent would have a differential of 1, not nearly as good. After this has been selected, we also may want to look at the effect. Some effects apply when this witness is called, that is when it's selected to be placed in the middle of the table. Other effects may apply when you win. And then players will simply alternate playing cards from their hand. There are also other actions that you can perform, but by far the most common action is to play a card. When you play a card, to be able to play it, you look at the symbols on top of the card, and at least one must match the previous card, the card that you're trying to attach it to, so to speak. So, for example, I would not right now be able to play this card there, because it is the only darn symbol that doesn't apply. And so let's say that I decide to apply this card here. When I play a card, I immediately take into account the extra influence that it generates, if it generates influence for me. If I'm the defense and I'm playing one that generates for the prosecution, that doesn't do anything for me. So right now I would have 6 influence so far, and I resolve the effect. If there is an effect that needs to be resolved immediately, there may be victory effects, which however don't necessarily apply because when you determine victory, you will only benefit from, I'm looking for one victory that would apply here. Let's say at the end of this witness, I win this witness, then I only benefit or only resolve the victory effects from the witness card and the last, that is the visible, the last card that I play. The last card I play has a victory effect and I win the witness, then I get that advantage. And so what you see there, that would be a legal thingy. Some cards are called procedures, so they don't generate influence. They're very good to extend your chain because in that sense for symbols they count as wild, and so then later you can add something that you would not have been able to add otherwise. However, procedures can also be played as your action for the turn. Instead of playing a card into your examination chain, you play to the side, and that's all you do for the time being. But basically you loaded that action, you readied that action. Then in a later turn, instead of playing a card to your examination or into your procedure area, you can trigger the procedure and then you simply resolve the effect, and then the card is discarded. And some of these procedures can be extremely powerful, especially the surprise witness. Let's see if I can find it. Of course not. Yeah, okay, there it is. The surprise witness. Again, you need to load it, but then when you use it, boom. If the judge is agreeable to you, and maybe you'll need to spend a cyber token for that, you claim the witness, boom, right away, and replace it with the top card of the witness deck, orienting it either way. That means one of the witnesses that were not in play. That is a big plot twist. Then switch the judge to be agreeable to your opponent, I guess because they don't like a little theatrics. Because that's exactly how I would want my surprise witness to come in. And that's how it works. So, between loading / charging procedures, triggering procedures, but most commonly playing cards into your into your examination chain and resolving the effects, of course, as you play them. Say I play this card, I get to draw a procedure from my discard. I know I'm gonna get that one again if I can. So you play these cards, from time to time you play these other cards. Remember, you can object, remember you can use your sidebar token, but that's the general idea. You will play cards to increase your influence over the witness. The examination of a witness is over when both players decide to pass or they cannot play cards anymore. At that point, the player with the most influence wins the witness. If there is a tie, the player that the judge is favoring, and then you take that one and you put it in your personal pile of collected witnesses. These are very important for the closing arguments. We play until we have used all of the witnesses. Oh, another important thing, yes, when you claim a witness, you check the differential, the difference between the influence of the winner and the influence of the loser. That differential is a number of influence points that you can spend to influence the opinion of the members of the jury. That is very important. Then we get to the closing arguments that also may generate points in that sense. Players look at the cards, at the witness cards that they collected. Suppose that I collected, among others, these witnesses here. Do you remember I showed at the beginning the strategy cards they're used for setup, selecting witnesses, but also during the closing arguments, which is the final phase of the game after all witnesses have been examined and assigned. You look at these symbols. You gain influence for each witness that you have that has one of the symbols on your strategy card. So that will generate extra influence points. These will be spent. And that again will alter. That will also alter the loyalty, the opinions of the members of the jury, because ultimately it's all about them. If at the end of the game all members of the jury favor the prosecution wins. If even just one of them is on the side of the defense, then the defense wins. I find Lawyer Up quite enjoyable. It is very thematic, to many levels, in many ways. For example, I like the fact, and maybe there's a bit of social satire here, that the truth is irrelevant. You are the lawyer. It's not your job to establish the truth, to establish if the person did it or did not do it. If you are trying to send to jail a murderer or to get a murderer out of jail, your job is to make your point, to give a spin to things. And in that sense, the game is pretty interesting. You can also still actually try to quote-unquote figure out the case, because you have a lot of flavor text, which is very thematic, and so you try to get a sense of who may have actually done it, what the situation was, how does that element relate to that other one. The cards that are specific to a case are interconnected thematically that way. I guess you could try again to solve the puzzle, but in the spirit of the game, I found that my point was to win, not to discover the truth. That is interesting. And again, it's thematic, not necessarily in the sense of how actual trials work, because actually I wouldn't be able to make an accurate determination about that. But based on my knowledge of legal drama and fiction about it, it feels that it's pretty loyal to that. There is fidelity to the genre, if not to the reality, which there might be, but definitely to that genre. So it's an interesting take on that fictional genre, if nothing else, and if you enjoy it, well, you find yourself in that situation. Now, mechanically the game, of course, when you play cards that have to follow the previous suits or one of the previous suits, of course, the fear is always, magnified Uno. And there is a little bit of that element, because that is common to all of these chaining symbol games, but of course there's a lot more here that adds a lot more flavor, adds more choices and chances, choices and strategies and possibilities. Yes, to an extent, because in general, playing as many cards as you can is preferable to not playing as many. There are exceptions, of course, because I may play this very long chain, but the only way for me to do it is to get a victory card at the end that I don't really want. I don't want that effect. I don't want it right now. I don't want it ever. And there's another victory condition that would like to be at the end of my chain because I like to trigger that one, but that would be at the end of a shorter chain. And so that's an interesting decision there, because what's the point having this great victory condition in a chain that doesn't win, that never triggers? So there is that. However, again, generally speaking, playing as many cards as possible is preferable, and so once you have your hand of cards, and you will build one chain in your hand that you want to do, maybe two possible things, and you adjust to what the opponent does, but things may be on autopilot in several turns, which makes them a little less exciting. But then the opponent throws something at you that changes the situation entirely. So there are a lot of plot twists, as I guess the genre really demands. There are surprises, there are plot twists, but there will still be turns that you plan at the beginning when you get your hand of cards and you play them exactly the way nothing else happens, and those are a little less interesting. Another danger, of course, is that the game may feel a bit repetitive because it's one witness after the other, and definitely one thing that that I don't particularly like. It feels to me that the game, it's a little too long. It can definitely drag. The first time you play it, will easily take you 2 hours just because the players are becoming familiar with the effects. And the following times that you play it may be about 2 hours again because now you're familiar with the effects and you're actually planning about it and trying to create those combos, create those sequences, cards placed in a certain order. But if I do play this thing here, and I increase my chain, I make it longer, So 2 hours in my experience is what it takes to play the game. And for a game where you're playing cards and triggering effects based on chains or similar symbols, it's a little too long. At the end of the game, I was happy. I was not unhappy, but I felt that I would have been a lot happier if the game lasted 20-30 minutes less. The very fact that you start with a fairly lengthy extended setup, the phase in which you're preparing those decks, of course, that right there, you may begin the game, I wouldn't say tired, but some of your steam may already been gone, and then you go through 9 witnesses, etc, etc, etc. So there is that element that makes the game, can make the game drag a little too much. I wish it was a little shorter, but other than that, in general, I think it's a good game. I enjoyed it. Again, if it was shorter, I would love it. As is, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the theme, I enjoyed the plot twist, I enjoyed the strategies. When there are turns that are a little more reactive, in which I have to change my strategies. And sometimes, I said it as it was a negative thing always, that I plan my turn and I play it as is. But maybe the sequence that I had in my hand, that I played in my hand, was very fun, was very exciting, did give me a lot of benefits. And I'm still worried that I may not be able to pull it off because you do something else. So there are times in which you prepare your sequence in your hand before the first card is played, and you execute it exactly as you planned it. And it can still be exciting if I'm afraid that I wouldn't be able to execute it exactly as I planned it. And then, of course, you have the objection. Right there, you disrupted my chain as I played it, and then I have to think about it again. So overall, it's a fun game with interesting interactions, with interesting decisions, a lot of replay value, a very interesting theme, and it feels very intensely thematic. If it lasts a little less, I would love it, love it, love it. As it is, I like it, like it, like it.